It's St. Patrick's Day, and welcome to bourbonblog.com. We've been covering some great stories this week on Irish whiskey, and what a pleasure it is. This is a new one that is a collaboration with our good friends. It's Jesse from Henebery there near San Diego. We've done a lot of work. We love what Henebery does. And also our new friend, Alan Quane from Dublin Mercantile, joining us live from Ireland to try out this new whiskey. How's it going, guys?
Going really well, Tom. It's thanks for having me on. I'm live in Dublin here. The party, the St. Patrick's Day party, is well in flow, shall we say? I was in the city centre of Dublin this morning, actually for breakfast with a number of your colleagues or your countrymen, and they were already going at it at 7:30 this morning. So
Wow.
Dublin's on fire right now.
First time in 3 years, really, that a big party like this. It's probably one of the biggest St. Patty's Day parties you've seen in Dublin for a while, right?
Yeah, I think it's been building for a few weeks now since they kind of lifted the lid on restrictions here in Ireland. There's been a talk about, we need to have this massive sort of blow off of steam. And I think Paddy's Day just falls beautifully. In fact, the government just announced not only a national holiday today, but they announced a new national holiday tomorrow. So now we have a 4-day run at it. So I'll just give you a sense. Yep, there's going to be 4 days of
new national holiday.
Yeah, it's a brand new one. It is to thank frontline workers during the COVID crisis. So it's falling on a very good weekend. A lot of people looking forward to blowing off some steam.
Well, we've been enjoying it too, and I know you're having a great time there. Jesse, at Henebery, where you're today. I mean, obviously you're pouring a lot of your great whiskeys there at Henebery, but today you're unveiling this, right?
We are. We're excited to finally be launching Dublin Mercantile Blending Co. whiskey. Been working on it for upward near over a year now with Alan over there, and I'll tell you right now, Alan, we're very excited to be celebrating all 4 of these days with you guys. So we're going to join you in the festivities over here on this side of the pond. So we're looking forward to that.
Love it.
Absolutely. And again, I'm sipping this. Thank you all again for getting us some of the whiskey, right before St. Patrick's Day. I just got it yesterday. I opened it right away. I tried it. I was like, this is so good. Tell me, what is this? What's the project? Where do you want to begin? First of all, it's delicious. We can begin there. But tell us about this. This is amazing.
Okay, Jesse, I'll jump in on that.
Please
do. I think, Tom, really the inspiration for the brand around Dublin Mercantile blending was really couched in the history of Irish whiskey and Irish whiskey making. And briefly, if I could, we talk in Ireland about in the 12th century, the fine monks brought distilling to the country. They called it Ishkebaha, which was water of life. And the thinking at that time was, well, it's going to save lives, because if you drank the water at the time, you're probably going to get some kind of plague or die. So they felt they were doing God's work, and we still feel we're doing that today. So that's the kind of tradition of Irish whiskey making. It really grew out of medicinal purposes, from the monasteries into the mainstream. And then, 16th, 17th, 18th century, Ireland and distilleries boomed, well over 100 coming into the 1900s on the island here, over 100 distilleries. And really, Mercantile, the inspiration for that is the heyday of Irish whiskey was right there at the turn of the century in the early 1900s. And there were a lot of merchants, sort of mercantile traders. They were grocery stores, they were pubs, they were, just outlets for selling stuff in the neighborhood. And there were guys in basements, in caverns, and they were getting their hands on whiskey, Irish whiskey, and they were blending them in different ways and finishing them in different casks. And if you take 1905, the sort of that peak year, there would have been casks and wood coming from all over the world. So Dublin was booming. It was coming out of a very strict Victorian time, coming into sort of the Edwardian creativity, innovation time. And you think of the early 1900s in the world of innovation, and you had, cars, airplanes, electricity. Literally the world was waking up to a whole new era. And at that time, 7 out of 10 whiskeys consumed around the world was Irish.
Wow.
70% of whiskey consumed globally was Irish at that
Amazing.
time.
That's
so
amazing.
we were in our heyday, and we were loving it. And really the Mercantile brand, comes out of that tradition of local blenders, local traders making bespoke blends of whiskey for their valued customers. So that's the essence of it in terms of the brand.
It was at its height right then, and it was at its height right before Prohibition, and that did do some damage, didn't it? From what I hear.
We had what we call the big collapse of the Irish industry. Yeah. Then it just went to hell, quite frankly. Particularly in the 1920s, we had built an enormous business in America. You can imagine a lot of Irish Americans who were pulling that through, particularly on the East Coast. The temperance movement was here in Ireland and particularly strong in the US at that time. So that Prohibition really did kill a lot of that Irish whiskey business. The other obvious one, of course, is we managed to fight for our independence in Ireland. We detached from the British Empire and gained our independence in 1922. And unfortunately, that detached us from the British Empire, which at the time covered 25% of the world's landmass. So we didn't just shut ourselves out of the US of A, we shut ourselves out of a lot of the world. So it really collapsed on the back of that for decades and decades.
Yeah, that flag you fly today it's actually 100 years old this year, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah, the state is, the Republic is 100 years old, and at Easter, the very famous Easter Rising that led to the War of Independence that got our independence is all, it's about today really kicks off the celebration of that in the Irish culture, and it's going to go on for months.
Yeah,
it's a big year for us.
Yeah, and Jesse, what a year and what a time to be involved in Irish whiskey. What inspired you, Jesse? Tell me about this, about how this.
Well, I'm glad you asked. Matthew Henebery, my namesake, great-great-great-grandfather, actually escaped the potato famine in 1849 from Ireland. Wow. So we always, in the deepest part of our hearts, loved the Irish whiskey movement and had nothing but love and respect for it. So fast forward 10 years later in this industry, we were blessed with the introduction to Alan over here, and everything that he spoke of with the mercantile, the trade, the craft, the bespoke, that all the things that he mentioned are exactly on par of what we've been trying to accomplish here on a level with different styles of whiskey, right? So then, the synergy just lit the room up, and we haven't looked back since. So we've continuously just, worked together. Alan's came out to San Diego twice now within the last month and a half. And so our relationship has just blossomed, and the lust and the love for this industry is just growing on the American side and on the Irish side as well. So it's been nothing but an enjoyable journey. And every time I take a sip of the Dublin Mercantile Blending Co., it just reminds me of all the hard work that not only we've done, but all the hard work that the distillers in Ireland have been doing for years and years on revitalizing the Irish whiskey brand as a whole. So we're very blessed to be a part of that, because we really believe in the style, the history, and of course the flavor that you get to try today, Tom.
This is so delicious, and I know you've done such a great job with all of your whiskeys, with all of your products over the years there at Henebery, and then to give birth to this new one. I mean, this is really exciting to see, American distillery, craft distillery that's continuing to grow, to say, hey, we love whiskey so much, we care about Ireland and Irish whiskey. We're going to do this. I mean, this is a really fascinating story.
Well, thank you, Tom. I would love Alan to introduce our the core behind it as well. I mean, that was another selling point for me, being involved with not only Alan, but Noel Sweeney, and I'll let him kind of tell you a little bit about who he is. I've learned so much from just starting to work with him for the last year, as eating my humble pie over here, thinking, I have some things figured out, and then talking to Noel Sweeney for 20, 30 minutes, I realized how much I don't know. So it's just really great to be in a room with a guy at that caliber and what he's been able to accomplish over the years. So I would love Alan to kind of introduce that part of the business as well.
Please.
Yeah, Tom, I think Jesse's right on the money. You know, Noel Sweeney is the man. He's the master distiller and blender behind this. When I go back to my story of Irish history, Irish whiskey and the history of it, you know, it did die a death right through to the 1980s.
Right.
And in fact, you know, I told you about 70% of the world's whiskey back in the early 1900s being Irish. We were down to about 600,000 cases going into the mid 80s. So we were literally decimated, you know, less than 1% of the world's whiskey at that stage. And guys like Noel led the charge with another man in Ireland who's been, you know, who's really been charged with the resurgence in whiskey, John Teeling. And they came together in the Cooley distillery. They would have, you know, brought a resurgence to great brands, great Irish whiskies such as Kilbeggan, Tyrconnell, you know, the single malt range, Connemara, bringing a very unique peated malt back into Irish. You know, a lot of people think, oh, that's Scotch territory. Well, actually, originally that was Irish territory, and we had a lot of turf and a lot of bog in Ireland to flavor our whiskey, and still do, I should say, thanks to the rain we get here. But the you know, Noel led that from the late 80s right through. He's a man. He's one of only 3 Irish men in the Whiskey Hall of Fame. You know, globally, there's about 45 or 50 members of that Hall of Fame, and he's one of 3. The other 2 are great Irish distillers, Jameson distillers, and they do a fine job. And Noel really stands out in their company. He's also won World's Best Distiller and Blender 3 times. So he's quite an icon in the Irish industry. I know, you know, we talk about legend and it being overused, but he genuinely is a very humble man. He's great fun. I hope you get a chance to meet him soon. He's very busy today, probably leading a parade somewhere in a town in Ireland and having a whiskey, I hope. But, you know, I've known Noel for some time. I talked to him about this project around, you know, when I go back to the early 1900s, Tom, that era was inspirational in bringing about whiskeys such as Redbreast and the spot whiskeys, which, to be honest, are some of the finest expressions of Irish whiskey that we have here on the island. So I think that engaged Noel to say, you know, motivate him to say, I'd love to bring back some of those blends, to bring back the art of bonding and blending, which was so just so popular back then and so creative. And you know, painting the picture with this particular blend, it's a classic Irish blend. You've got your single malt and your grain. There's a small touch of peated malt, but that's really for a bit of backbone in it. It's not
a little. I get that. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't. Well, I'm glad you pick it up.
I get a touch. I feel like I do.
Wow. We found that actually with a lot of guys in San Diego, because, and maybe that's with respect, right, you know, the backdrop of a lot of bourbon drinkers. Could perhaps be. Any kind of smoke coming into it is going to stand out. A little bit. Yeah. So it certainly gives it a bit of backbone. It stands up beautifully in cocktails or you know, sip, savor, or shoot. We don't mind how you consume it. That's your business. And it's finished in a cognac cask, and that's important to us because cognac was very popular around the early 1900s in Europe and in Dublin in particular. You know, the 4 big distilleries here had so much spirit going around. They were looking for wood. They were looking for casks to lay it down in. So, you know, it wasn't surprising that cognac got a touch of that. And right, that's what we're trying to re-express and bring back in this particular blend.
It's beautiful. And again, I haven't tried them all. I've tried a lot of the Irish whiskeys. I haven't seen too many lately done in cognac. I mean, is it something that hasn't been done as much the last several years, or?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think the way we look at Irish whiskey in the industry here is it's really at the cusp of an explosion in creativity. Right. So, you know, when Jesse and I sat down initially, certainly in the early days, you know, talked about the Irish whiskey business has exploded. It's the fastest growing spirit in the world in the last 10 years. When you look at it over a 10-year, and I know bourbon has been on a hell of a run, right, and the likes of tequila are phenomenal, but over a 10-year run, it has literally more than doubled, and it's projected to more than double again by 2030. And in fact, Irish whiskey is projected to overtake Scotch whiskey in the US in the next 3 years. So there's something going on with the accessibility of an Irish whiskey. The triple distilled, the delicacy of it, it's very flexible. It can be mixed. It can
go a lot of ways.
Dipped. So I think it's just fitting into the lifestyles of all of us and new consumers, particularly women come into the whiskey category. I think I've certainly had a lot of discussions with women about whiskey, and they're loving the fact that it's so accessible and it can be mixed. It's a casual drink. There's no formality about Irish whiskey, that's for sure.
So Irish taking over Scotch in, you said 3 years or so? 3 years?
The projections officially are 2025, but a lot of people, including John Teeling, has a room set up in his distillery to have the party the day it's announced. So we think he believes it's going to be in 2024 sometime. But I guess we'll see how the markets start, recover post-COVID. And certainly the Irish whiskey it's been double digit in the States for 12, 14 years now. So
Tom, maybe me and you have to make a flight out there for that.
I want to go. We got to do it. We got to do it, Jesse. We'll go over there and have a party. I love it.
I'm booking my plane right now, Alan. So
come on over.
Give me a room.
No, I love Irish whiskey. And again, the more I sip this one, the more I get a lot of the notes. It's everything you do get a touch of that cognac creaminess. You get the approachability, but you get some texture and some depth in this that I don't see in just every Irish whiskey. I mean, this has a lot going on. It really
that's great, Tom. Thank you. That's a huge compliment to the chef and Noel. I'll be passing that along. I won't take the credit for it. The idea was, I think because you start with a classic blend that is, it tends to be what we call delicate, not light, delicate. I mean, this is 80% proof stuff. It's got a good punch to it. It is the idea around the cognac was bringing a kind of a fruitiness and bringing that kind of layer to it. And by all accounts, we found younger and older consumers, were really drawn to it, surprised by it. And I think, I guess I'm not that surprised when I go to the States and I go into bars and chat to customers. They talk about the default in the Irish category is Jameson, which is a fine blend of Irish whiskey, but it is the classic blend. There's no, other than the obvious bourbon finish, because, we take a lot of the fine American oak out of the US once you're finished with your bourbon maturing, and we take it here to Scotland and to Ireland and use that. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it is, it is what it is. It's a nice blend of Irish whiskey with a small bit of a bourbon finish, the vanilla and the sweet notes.
Right.
And that's it. So I think by bringing the cognac in, a little bit of that peated malt, I don't want to overplay that, but it does give it that backbone. It just makes it more interesting, more layered, more textured and layered is a great compliment. So thank you. That's what we were shooting for.
It does. It really does. Jesse, what do you taste on it? What are your favorite parts about this?
Well, when we deconstruct it, like, me, I'm a big flavor guy. I always go after, as much flavor per drip as possible. So, you asked me a great question, why I got so involved with this. Well, had it been just a regular blend of things, it probably wouldn't have excited me as much. But I think the American consumer really gets interested in complexity, right? Complexity with a touch of simplicity. And I think this just nails that. So I think it's blended perfectly. I think the peat is more like a spice, almost like a salt and pepper to a great dish, as opposed to a bomb of extra flavor like some of these other brands do on purpose, right? Some people really want to overwhelm the palate with smoke and be that category leader. Whereas this, I think, is used in the exact right way that it should have been used, which is to add that backbone, that little flavor. It takes you on a journey. Every single drink that I drink of this, it's walking me through an experience. And I think that's what I always look for in my whiskey. If it doesn't do that for me, then it's really not something that I want to consume. So this is something that just really hit all of those boxes for me. And just being able to just take the different, the blends of it and really understand what that is. And I'll let Alan tell you what those are. So you guys can, when you taste it, really take that journey with us. It just won my heart. It really did. It just won me completely over. And this is just the start. I just want to let you guys know that we're working on extensions to this line already as we speak. So this is the one that we really wanted to be the gateway. Like, let's get this into the hands as many drinkers as possible to give them this experience. And then let's take them on a second and a third and maybe even a fourth journey into the world of blending and how remarkable it can be and it will be. So this is just day one. Alan, please deconstruct this bill for us, this mash bill for us, and the blending bill.
Yeah, and that's great that you talk about the innovation, because mercantile traders were that's what they were. They were just a platform for mixing and mashing and experimenting and so on. So that's very much in the spirit of the conversations that we have with Jesse and the team, and with Noel, obviously, hand on it. But yeah, I think with this particular blend, I was thinking about the innovation. There's no end to the amount of blends and finishes you can bring to this when you think about it. And Irish whiskey has been set up in such a way, from a regulatory perspective, where it's much more flexible. It's much more open source, if you like, than say Japanese or Scotch or even bourbon. Although I admire, and I have some of my favorite spirits are bourbon drinks. Absolutely love them. I have a real sweet tooth, so I like some of the real vanilla notes. But it leaves the door open for us. And in the early 1900s, like I said, there were spirits coming in casks from all over the world. So of course there's, the Olorosos, the ports, the Madeiras, the heavy wines, the cognacs, but also, beers. And, I'm an ex Guinness man in my career, and I have a huge respect for that brand and the tradition of it. But again, in the early 1900s, there was so much Guinness pouring on the streets of Dublin. And so many casks available for the distilleries to lay down their liquid. That's an obvious one. So we have lots of inspiration around the innovation pipeline, as Jesse says. So there's lots more to come.
Lots of inspiration. And Alan, you were mentioning Guinness. Some of your tell us about your history, about what you've done on the beverage.
How long have you got? I've been drinks guy for a number of years now. I guess I would have started out in big brands. So I've worked on brands such as Heineken in Europe, Guinness globally. So I spent quite a lot of my time was actually in Africa, in Nigeria. It's the biggest Guinness market in the world. 3 big breweries down there. I then moved on to run a spirits business that was based in Dublin, but the markets were out in Asia. So we sold a lot of spirits to South Korea and Taiwan. Spent quite a bit of time out there. Really, really enjoyed the people and the culture out there. And we kind of moved in, set up a brewing company a few years ago with the Smithwick's family. It's called Sullivan's Brewing Company, and it's still going incredibly well, mostly in the States, the East Coast, as well as the Great Lakes. Right. And it kind of led me to, I had spent some time at Diageo where I was working on Johnny Walker. And I guess for my sins, I was sent to Russia to try and convince the Russians to drink whiskey as opposed to vodka. And 96% of Russians drank vodka. And it was a hard sell, I can tell you. Even though we told them, for God's sake, stop drinking what your old man drank. Stand up for yourself and have a whiskey. They weren't buying it. So I've always had a desire and a passion in the world of whiskey, and this has just unleashed it now. So I couldn't be happier. I'm in the sweet spot of my career now.
That's beautiful. What a cool thing that you all have partnered together. And again, brand new company, the Dublin Mercantile Blending Company. This is just the first of many. I know people are watching and they're already commenting and they're saying, wow, where can I get this? Where can I be looking for it? Because you do want to look for it. I know this is something so special. Where will this be then? Where can folks find this?
Yeah, so I mean, we launched online sales today, so you could go to heneberywhiskey.com, and I'll give you all the retailers that offer it. But literally, this just happened this week. I mean, we're doing our hard launch this week. So heneberywhiskey.com will give you all the updates on everywhere to buy it. You could order it online, and we're doing a hard launch in Southern California right now. I know that's just a small piece of the market here, but We just really wanted to get it out to as many consumers as possible. And I think probably within the next 6 months, you'll be able to find it, in a lot more retail locations and bars near you guys.
More and more places. Heneberywhiskey.com is where to find it. It's quite a remarkable story, and just the fact that again, that you all have joined forces on this. Noel Sweeney, his history, and just all that he's brought to this, and the flavor. I didn't even ask. I mean, I think it's one of those things. No matter what the age of this is, I love it. But can you tell us the kind of the approximate age range of the whiskeys in there?
Yeah, it's so the grain is a 4-year-old, and it's been finished in bourbon cask. So that's what that's
Very
standard
nice.
issue, if you like, in Ireland. And Noel does a great job explaining how grain whiskey has a little bit more texture and a little bit more grassy, more oiliness to it than say a Scotch or Japanese grain. And grain tends to be a filler for a lot of other blends, whereas in Ireland we look at grain as as a standalone whiskey. In fact, it was sold en masse going back to the 1900s, the 1800s and early 1900s as single grain whiskies, which is quite unheard of today. Now there's some expressions starting to pop up, so stay tuned on that. But that's the bulk of it. The 80% of the blend is in that sort of rich, grassy, oily grain, finished in bourbon. The malt is the same. It's 4-year-old. It's about 4.5 years old, and it is finished in it's in the bourbon cask as well for its life. And then for the last 9 months or so, we take it out, we disgorge it into the cognac cask. So, and we get those fresh from, the Cognac region in France. We can't disclose what cognac distilleries it comes out of, but we're very proud of the connections. And I think your viewers will probably know the story of the likes of Hennessy. These were founded by great Irishmen.
Sure.
Hennessy in France, back in the day. And, we love that association with it as well. So they're fresh cognac casks, and then we ship it. And really that's the magic of the partnership with Jesse. We're absolutely blessed to find Henebery and a guy like Jesse who just buys into our philosophy and the vision. And really it's about getting it to customers who care about it, who want to serve it to their customers who are kind of discerning. They're looking for something different, something unique, something with a bit of a spin on it, and that's what we're hoping to bring, and delighted to do it.
Oh yeah, beautiful. So again, that grain whiskey, that's about 4 years old. The malt, which you said 4.5 or so, does it all go into cognac, or just the malt goes into cognac?
Just the malt. We find we've done. Trust me, we've tested this many different ways. Blending can be a lot of fun in that regard. But there was more than enough, we felt. And one of the things I've learned from working with Noel is he would say less is better, less is more. Right. So the bit that I keep going back to is within the malt, 3% of it is a peated malt.
Tiny bit.
So it's a very, very, very small pinch of it. And I think Jesse described it beautifully as, that little bit of salt and pepper seasoning to the meat. It gives it a bit of tenderness and a bit of texture. My gut feel from the outside was if we're going to be peated malt, we should give it a right shot of it. We were playing with 1%, 2%, 5%, 10% on we couldn't drink it, and he was right. So I've learned many things from Noel, but less is more is one of the more valuable ones when it comes to blending.
I think it's dynamite. A lot of mouthfeel too. I mean, as you taste, different whiskeys back and forth, I can really get just a beautiful mouthfeel on this too. There's a lot happening on the flavor. The mouthfeel's beautiful. Again, it's Dublin Mercantile. The place to look at is Heneberywhiskey.com. We're looking at potentially more releases. It sounds like that y'all are working at in the near future.
We sure are.
Stay tuned.
amazing. It's
I'm
amazing.
going to tell you a quick story about Noel Sweeney.
Please,
He came to my distillery. This was a couple weeks ago, and he happened to walk in on a day that we were doing a blend of just some of our barrels. And I've always thought I had a pretty good grasp of this thing, and I feel pretty confident in my palate and what I'm capable of. Within 3 minutes of him walking into our blending session, it wasn't even built, like he wasn't supposed to be a part of it. He watched us for like maybe 35 seconds, 40 seconds, pulled me aside, and he's like, "Why aren't you doing this?" And he just broke down some real basic things, proofing down to 10, proofing all the way down to, this super low proof, then blending. Then it just blew my mind, and it just changed the way that I blend and look at whiskey altogether. And this was within, being around him for 3 minutes in my own distillery. So I tip my hat to that guy. If he watches this, he taught me a lot, probably more in those 45 minutes of being in the distillery than any education that I've touched. So it was really great to just get real feedback in real time from the guy. And he's a master at what he does. I mean, you could just tell by the way that he blended this perfectly. And I look forward to the more blends that are coming down the pipe right now. So I'm excited.
That's so cool. Bringing these forces together, all of you, with the talent and passion that you have. Well done. And again, raising a toast to you on St. Patrick's Day. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And really, this is a beautiful whiskey. Be watching for it. I know we'll be talking about it a lot more. And also the growth of Irish whiskey. Who knows? I mean, as you're mentioning there, Alan, you may be getting closer and closer back to that point of having more of it in more hands across the world.
God forbid. We're back.
Hey, cheers, everybody watching. Thank you for watching tonight, sharing, liking this, and everybody have a happy St. Patrick's Day and a safe one. Cheers.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's